Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by the fellows. We got Brian Henry, Pete Mohan. How you doing, fellas?
Hiya.
It's a celebration! Woo! And just to add a little bit more to the celebration, we've got a new contributor, John Fick, a 2009 Marquette alum. John, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, guys.
What a freaking day to add as somebody new. What a just a beautiful day to be on this earth. Fantastic.
So if you watch the first half of this game, a 95-90 victory over Providence, if you watch the first half, it was one of the worst halves of basketball that I have ever seen in my life, and I've been watching basketball since day one. The second half, it totally flipped, and if we buried the lead anymore, we would be ashamed. We want to collectively apologize to Markus Howard for insinuating in the previous podcast that he was in a micro slump. Markus Howard put up 52 points.
Say that number again.
52 points, 2 assists, 2 steals. I don't know why I'm reading anything else. 52 points. Broke a Marquette record. Tied a Big East record. Fellas, what is there to say about this?
I've been watching Marquette basketball my entire life. I have watched a lot of good players come through here, and I have never seen anybody go just unconscious the way Markus Howard did for that entire second half in OT. I mean, everything that Providence threw at him, he buried just a dagger after a dagger after a dagger. Next thing you know, he's got 52 points.
It was a spectacle, but I think that we figured out what's going on here. Actually, I'm a little bit nervous to hear from Vic that he was unconscious because Steve Lapis maybe said that 17 times, and we might have to check the hospital in Providence to see if Marcus is there. No, but he was putting up a 52 spot for his favorite Marquette player, Cam Murata.
Killer Cam!
I sincerely believe that Cam was on his mind. He was like, Cam, I see you. Drop that 5 deuce for you.
This is how I would assess that performance. That was... I will go. I mean, I was at the Novak game as well. That's the best performance I've ever seen by a Marquette player, Markus Howard tonight, and he allowed them to steal that game against Providence. Because as Mike said, that was a horrendous first half. Stretches were good in the second half, and then a disastrous 16-2 run that allows Providence to what I think everyone thought put the game away. And Marcus decides to single-handedly tie it, and then turns into the Incredible Hulk in overtime as well. That was incredible. That's the only way to describe it.
Markus Howard scored the and one layup that actually led to the tie, which forced it into overtime. Markus Howard was the only Marquette player to score after 8 minutes and 12 seconds left in regulation. He scored the final 15 points in regulation. I mean, I have no words, to be quite honest.
Are you at a loss for words, Mike?
I am at a literal loss for words.
Well, let somebody else talk then. Jesus.
I just, like, one of the things I loved about the whole performance was the transparent lack of diversity about what we were trying to do in OT. I mean, Rousey would sort of slow dribble the ball up, pass it off to Marcus. He caught a quick screen, ran the exact same play on like 3 consecutive possessions, and got right around his guy. Like Providence didn't know what was coming, and they just couldn't stop him. I don't know whether it was terrible defense to let him get to the rack in OT like that, or if apparently Marcus's first step just got fiery hot as the game got late. But he did everything he wanted to, and for the most part didn't take bad shots, with the exception of maybe that one heat check in OT.
Off of that point, when someone gets to 40 points, to me, it should be almost impossible for them to get the ball. And I would agree with John. I don't think Providence sold out in denying him the basketball, because he didn't always have it in his hands to start every possession. They ran him off screens. They put him in the corner. How was he continuing to get open? I mean, I don't know what Ed Cooley or the rest of that defense was doing. I mean, I'm thrilled by it, but that was a disastrous defensive performance by Providence. And, hey, you know what? You get what you deserve. You let a guy that hot be open that often, frick, he's going to put 50 on the board. Why the hell not?
Well, it just so happens also that the 52nd word of the King James Version of the Bible's Old Testament is God.
Yeah, baby! That's the shit you get on this podcast.
I don't know what that means, but I love it. I love it.
He did it for Ray Lewis, man. 52 weeks in a year. He did it for he put up a point per week. He's already got a point to cover this whole year.
Are you saying he scored every week?
Every week he was putting in buckets. Hey, this is a historical performance. In case Mike didn't say it, and I think that he did, this is the highest scoring performance ever by a Marquette player. Ever. Can I get an echo?
That's higher than Dwayne Wade. That's higher than Jay Crowder. That's higher than Steve Novak. That's higher than Jimmy Butler. I mean, it's unbelievable. We could spend the next 10 minutes just talking about this, but Brian doesn't want to.
Can I add one thing to that? And John, I was texting with Vic during the game. I mean, it was very apparent during I think, I forget the exact conversation point, but it was when Rousey got that third foul, it was like, well, frick, maybe Marcus will show up now. Because he struggled in that first half. I know he finished with 10 points.
Big time.
But he struggled in that first half. Like, he scored 50 points, 52 points tonight, and he did it really with not playing well for half the game.
Yeah, he wasn't in rhythm in the first half, and then he drew a foul, and I texted Brian something like to the extent of maybe buries 2 free throws, gets a little bit of the feel back for the basketball. I mean, like the next possession or two later, he comes down and he buries a 3, and then here we go, because his shot, even in his micro slump, his form hasn't deteriorated. His shot choice hasn't really deteriorated. He's maybe forced it a little, but it's not like he suddenly turned into, Derek Williams out there. He was playing good basketball and the shots weren't falling, and all of a sudden he just needs to get his rhythm back. He gets into it. All of a sudden he's NBA Jam on fire, and he let it ride.
Perhaps my favorite part in looking at Twitter at the reactions that are pouring in is that apparently Philadelphia Eagles running back, in general all-around great human being, LeGarrette Blount, is not only a Marquette basketball fan, but a huge Markus Howard fan, just tweeting love for the kid left and right. That brings me so much joy.
No, I do want to really, really quickly point out a couple key shots in this game. And on the topic of Marcus, to stay perfect, he hit the game-tying free throw. And, that's probably the biggest pressure free throw he's had all season. He's still got the streak on the line. That pressure is building throughout the season. Eventually, he'll probably miss one. But he didn't there. And then Hauser's three-pointer that he made was huge in keeping this team in the game.
I'm just saying, thank you for pointing that out. We should gush for 99% of the time about Marcus, but that last 3 by Sam Hauser was just frickin', just ice in your veins, like
ballsy.
Onions.
They had to have that. They could not get any freaking stops. So the idea that Providence was going to get the ball back down 2, you were just like, dear God, minimum we're going to foul. For the love of God, it's going to be an and one like it's been every flipping possession. The second story of this game, nobody played defense in the second half. Our defense got worse with every possession. Harry Froling is still somewhere in the key looking for where his man is and has no goddamn clue. Like, that was an absolute disaster defensively for both sides, but props to Sam for knocking that shot down.
Well, let's face it, Sam should be getting, his chicken parm at Schrader served to him by Marcus all week because he saved the glory of Marcus's performance. Nobody cares about 52 and a loss, but we got the win. It's like Sam preserved the glory of Marcus's 52-point game with his shot. It's only good in a W, and it was a huge W at that on the road in the Big East. Not to miss the forest through the trees here.
No, that's a terrific point. We talked about it plenty of times on this podcast prior to this game that in order for Marquette to stay afloat in this tough stretch of the Big East, kind of in January here, we needed to get wins like this, and in particular this win. And I don't think, Brian, you were mentioning this before we hopped on, there's no other way to characterize this as a steal on the road, particularly when Providence didn't have their best player, their leading scorer in Randy Bullock because of the flu.
And I'll hand that off to John, who pointed that out before. Cartwright, there was a chance he wasn't going to play before the game, and he came on and had himself a day. I mean, Marquette was lucky to win that game. Fair to say?
I mean, absolutely. He had a bum wheel, and Cartwright he was really good. I mean, it's not like anyone's tuning in to listen to us gush about Providence's players, but they played really well. They had, especially in the, as Brian said, in the second half, no one was playing defense. But I think in the first maybe 4 possessions of the game, they had about 4 uncontested back cut layups. I mean, our defensive rotations weren't super great, and Cartwright was the beneficiary of a lot of that. I feel like I'm channeling my Brian Henry negative Nancy here, but there were.
I find that incredibly offensive.
There were plenty of things to look at and improve on, and being able to come away with it with a win when you play defense that poorly is, you got to have it.
Let me put it this way, because I agree, and I don't often, but in this instance I do agree with the Brian Henry negative Nancy philosophy.
Get on your feet, people. Yes.
We needed an historic performance from Markus Howard in order to overcome a team that, according to Ken Palm, was worse than us, a team without their best player, without their leading scorer on the floor. We needed a historic performance from Markus Howard to win by 5 points. That should tell you how terrible our defensive performance was. Not only in the first half, but in the second half, as Brian Henry mentioned. Our defensive rotations were terrible. It wasn't just Harry Froling. I think you saw lapses from Jamal. You saw lapses from almost everyone on the court. We're not going to get 52 points from Markus Howard every game this season. We already know that. Going forward, the defense remains the major weak link in this team. I want us to celebrate Markus Howard, but this isn't going to be a night in, night out thing. The problem is still the underlying defense.
Please allow me a moment to address the Twitter community out there. I'm going to give you a chance to turn the volume up on whatever you're listening on. Just please focus on this really closely.
Can we get a please allow me to introduce myself? My name is Brian.
Every single referee is not against Marquette basketball. Please take the time to wrap your heads around that we can't guard anybody and we hand check the shit out of everyone so we get called for a ton of fouls. Are there bad fouls called from time to time? Sure. It's basketball. It happens. But that team has the lateral movement ability right now of a freaking elephant, and no one can guard. So they get caught. So Sakar and him, everyone loses their minds on Sakar's 5th foul. How about fouls 1, 2, and 3? Good Lord!
I'm still stuck on elephants and lateral movement because I don't think I've ever seen an elephant move laterally.
Because they can't. That's Matt Helton, Harry Froling, and Theo John trying to guard a pick and roll right now. It's just props to Providence. I know Johnson, we're not going to try to go they put us in situations where we had to. That's going to be a game tape that opposing teams are going to use against us for how at least they're going to want to attack us. They're going to go bigger. Providence did that, and they put us in tough spots, and we had to foul a ton of that game.
I think the book is out on Marquette. It has been. It's not like they don't have tape from the prior games where you could see how Marquette doesn't rotate very well. I mean, a lot of the fouls that were committed were fouls committed because somebody was out of position defensively late on a rotation and committed a dumb foul on a bunny shot.
Yeah.
I mean, you start to play defense in a way that tends to commit more fouls when you're out of position, and we were out of position a lot. We've been out of position a lot. It's not like this is news to anybody with 2 eyes that's been watching the sport, the team all year.
It's where we're most comfortable, out of position.
And on that note...
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Check this out. Entering this game, we were actually first in the Big East in turnover percentage forced.
That's because Georgetown threw up on their shoes for 40 minutes last week. That's the only reason why.
Actually, that's a great point, Brian. But at the same time, our defense has been successful when we're forcing turnovers. We're not a team, obviously, that knows how to defend without fouling. We're going to foul. I mean, this is a team that essentially has to rely on risk-taking on defense in order to get the offense any kind of open looks on the break.
Fair.
We're not winning the rebounding battle. It's better for us to end a possession early and not let them get a shot because we clearly can't defend people's shot either. We're terrible at opposing field goal percentage. So this team is best when they're forcing turnovers, and they didn't do it enough to escape with a safe win tonight. But I think that Woj going to continue to expect this defense to use turnovers as our defensive strength.
As of editing time, your Marquette University Golden Eagles are tied for third in the Big East standings. So no matter what transpired in this game, Marquette came out victorious and is now 2-1 in the Big East, behind Xavier, Seton Hall, and Butler. We're actually ahead of Villanova right now. Of course, that will be worked out when Marquette on Saturday, January 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern in Philadelphia faces off against the Villanova Wildcats. Going to be a big game for Marquette. Certainly not one that any of us think we're going to come out with a victory from, but who knows? Maybe we get another performance from Markus Howard. I hope each and every one of you have been able to stick with our rambling and our celebration and have enjoyed this podcast. This has been one of the more fun episodes to record.
We really were all over the place today.
We really were all over the place, but I think...
I'm going to blame the newcomer. That's probably John's fault. Way to go, John.
Hey, I make a good fall guy. What can I say?
Mike, before you wrap it up, I do have some real talk for the fans who live in Milwaukee. For those of you who are students and those of you who are iffy about going to games, you just got the biggest blessing you possibly could, in that you weren't sitting at home trying to stay warm while Marquette popped 52 at home. You are lucky that he was on the road when he did that, because you would be pinching yourself if you miss that in the BC. We've said it before on this pod, this guy is a special player. Go to the games, watch him play. I mean, our next home game is huge. Seton Hall, Tuesday, January 9th. Everyone should be back on campus and at that game. We need it to be loud. You never know when this team might create history. I mean, it's that type of offense. So get out there and witness history. This is a great team, fun team to watch. Who knows how far they'll go in the tournament, if they make the tournament, but don't miss it while it's sitting right there in your lap.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop recording, but we're going to keep celebrating this win. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning into this episode of the Real Chili Podcast. We looked at some numbers earlier today, and we have more than doubled our listenership in less than a year. So thank you to each and every one of you who are tuning in from either the first day or who had just started listening. We're so glad you could join us for each podcast. Signing off for Brian Henry, John Fick, and Pete Mohan, I'm Mike Lavender. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Real Chili Podcast. We'll talk to you soon.